Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is where I talk whatever crap about whatever the crap I want to, and we are diving in to Doctor Who Series 1. I had to think there for a second because it is technically Season 1 because it's a reboot of the new era. So it's technically Season 1, but for me it's like season what even would it be? Like 18, 19? I don't even know at this point. It's been so long. But we're going to call it Season 1 to keep things easy. 1.2. That makes it more complicated. I'm not going to do that. I wanted to do a series reviewing Ncuti Gatwa's series of Doctor Who for a long time because I did something similar with Jodie Whittaker's series. I gave her series a try so that I could say that I tried to watch her episodes, and if I liked it, great, I could keep watching. And if I didn't, I could stop, but at least I could say I tried. And I did try. I got to Arachnids in the UK, and I found that I just wasn't enjoying it the way that I would want to keep going on with a review series for her tenure on the show. So I stopped at Arachnids in the UK and I didn't go back to it. But I wanted to give Ncuti Gatwa's series a fair shake because I gave hers a fair shake. The reason I'm so late, I mentioned it in my previous video. I had an accident in July and it really threw off my plans to do anything over the summer. I was in a cast, I couldn't walk, and by the time I was starting school again in October, I was literally just recovered and I wasn't for doing a review series while I was studying at the same time. So I'm getting to it now. After a whole other series has happened, but that just means more episodes hopefully to enjoy if I like this new era enough to keep going. Before I get into this, I do want to address a couple of things because I think there's some very important things I need to say before we start. First of all, I am not going to hate on anyone because of their gender, race, or sexuality. If that's what you're expecting from this series, it's not happening. I don't care that a black man was hired as the Doctor as long as he does the Doctor well. If he was the best actor for that part, then why should I care? I don't care about the sexuality of the Doctor. I personally headcanon him as asexual, but that is my personal headcanon. I don't try to enforce that onto anyone else. As long as it is written well and makes sense in the context of what is going on, I don't care. And that goes for any other character or actor on the show that is written out. I don't care as long as it makes sense, it is fair to the character, and doesn't make anyone an asshole, because sometimes people, the whole kill your gays, evil gays stuff. I'd like to think that we're kind of over that in the year of our Lord 2025, but you'd be fucking surprised because that's something else I need to bring up. I have been spoiled. I know where this is heading. I know what happened at the end of series 2, and it does kind of make it a bit difficult starting here at Space Babies and being like, I know where this is going. I know who he regenerates into at the end of series 2. I know who comes back. I know what... I know who ends up in Super Hell and why they're in Super Hell, and I'm trying my best to keep that out of my mind, heading, because it's like a train. Deciding to watch this now is like a train heading on collision into, because it's inevitable, this is where I'm going to end up. But I'm trying not to think about that. I know where I'm going. And I won't let that influence my decision on the quality of the earlier episodes, because you have to watch it with the knowledge that when this episode aired, we didn't know this, but when A happened, we didn't know B was going to happen. That kind of thing. I also want to clarify that this will not be in the kind of vein of the videos I used to make about Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. I know back in 2020, 2019 time, I was very volatile. I was a very angry child, teenager, late adult kind of person, and I felt very angry about the fact a woman had been hired as the Doctor. And as a woman myself, that is a pretty wild thing to kind of be angry about. I do think I had some solid reasoning in some parts. I don't believe that strong female characters should have to replace a male character to be considered an icon or a strong female character. I feel like we should write more new ones ourselves, because women deserve roles with new characters that aren't just taking over from a man, if that makes sense. But I didn't have the most like rational or kind way of putting that back in the day. I was very angry. I was very volatile. Now I am. If people enjoyed Jodie Whittaker's era, I'm happy for you. I personally wasn't one of those people. I personally couldn't get into her era, but I'm really happy that a lot of people did enjoy it, and there are plenty of people who give her the credit she deserves, because personally it just wasn't my era. I wasn't into it, but I'm not because oh she's a woman. I'm past that. I've grown. I'm 27, turning 27 in a couple of months. I have grown, so please forgive me for that kind of early adult angst that I had about that kind of thing. It was really embarrassing for me, actually. I don't like to think about it too much, but you are not going to get that kind of energy in this review series. It's not going to happen. And if I meet Jodie Whittaker, I would apologize profusely for the attitude I used to have. Even though I never directed it at her, I was never that kind of person. But, you know, just to make sure, because if you're coming in here looking for that kind of energy towards Shurigawa, it's not happening. It's just not going to happen. So you might as well click off if that's what you're expecting. I want to explain my history with Doctor Who as well, because I like to describe these videos as a Doctor Who veteran watches. Like I said, I'm turning 27. I'm not really like your classic description of what a veteran is. I remember I had someone comment on my channel going, oh, my book's a veteran is someone who's been watching since 1963. My parents weren't even born in 1963 yet, so that's quite impossible even for me to achieve. I call myself a Doctor Who veteran because as soon as I was old enough to stare at a TV screen, I was watching Doctor Who. My dad had his classic Doctor Who's on all the time before the reboot. I was aware of Regeneration, the Master, the Rani, the TARDIS, the Daleks, all of that before the 2005 reboot even happened. And I was 6 years old when the 2005 reboot happened. So this has been part of my life since I was no age. I have also become the very honoured recipient? Is that the right word? The very honoured recipient of my dad's Classic Who DVD collection. My dad owns every single classic Doctor Who that is currently available. Obviously not the lost ones, although I do have some of the audios of the lost ones that haven't been found or reanimated yet. I am a very lucky recipient of those DVDs. I own them, I have them, and I know it's very hard for a lot of people to watch the classic era, so I am very, very fortunate to have that. I also haven't watched The Timeless Child. I feel like that's also important to put out, because if there's any reference to that, I have no clue. I have a vague sort of understanding of what the Timeless Child storyline was. It is by no means definitive. I have no proper clues. So if anything like that is important or gets commentated on, please forgive me if I get a bit mixed up or confused. I haven't watched that. I don't understand it. Finally, before we get into the episode, my opinion is not definitive. Obviously, that's why it's called an opinion. Opinions are very subjective, and I think a lot of people kind of think whenever they click on these videos that people are expressing these opinions, expecting everyone else to take it as Bible, you know, take it like objectively. I by no means mean it in that way. This is all just my opinion. It's all subjective. If you agree, great. If you don't agree, let's start a nice debate in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. This is all just kind of from my perspective, and my perspective is exactly that, my own. So I'd love to hear other people's perspectives on it all too. So, you know, let's get some debates going in the comments once you hear what I think. So let's talk about Space Babies. I know Space Babies had a very, not the best reputation. I heard quite a few bad things about it when it first aired, and I hear that I've always heard it's a very harsh start to a new era. I kind of agree. It was a bit of a confusing plot to start with. But we'll just get into my thoughts that I wrote down as we go. It'll all be in order as it happened, because I was kind of taking notes as it was going on. So we'll start with the intro. I struggle to kind of like new intros. I'm very much a purist in the sense of if it doesn't sound like my childhood intro of Doctor Who, then I'm probably not going to like it. But that's my problem. That's just me being, you know, overwhelmed with nostalgia, and not like the kind of nostalgia that they're trying to force down our throats now, a la the series 2 finale. I just mean there's a part of me that's always just like, this doesn't sound like the Doctor Who of my childhood. I kind of go like, I don't like it, but that's my problem. That's not a commentary on how well composed or how how competently it's put together. That's just me being being difficult, you know. I do love the colours in the intro though. The new colours are fantastic. I love how space looks. Even when they were like looking out the window, all the colours were so beautiful. It was like oil on water. I love that. I love how they've made space look, even if it was just that part of space, if you know what I mean, that the space that the baby station was in. I loved how it looked. You can see the budget, like the budget is there. Disney money is there, and you can see it being used, which is really great. The show is notorious, especially in the classic era, for not having the best budgets. It was always bubble wrap, tinfoil, and some cardboard boxes, and lower the lights a little. So it's nice to sort of see Doctor Who get the budget that it deserves and to see what they do with that budget, because like I say, in the classic era, they did their best with what they had, but the BBC wasn't giving them much money to work with. The logo is iconic. I love that they went back to classic era roots with the new logo. I don't know if they changed the logo for series 2, but the logo they used for series 1, I love it. I love the diamond. I love how it's reminiscent of, I think it's Tom Baker's era of Doctor Who. I love when it references back to classic Who, but not enough to kind of confuse people who haven't seen it. It's like a reference that people who have watched classic Who can be like, oh, I recognize that. Whereas someone who hasn't seen the era Doctor Who isn't going to be like, the frick is that? Because I also know that Russell T Davies kind of boasted this as a hard reboot, meaning if you haven't watched the first reboot in 2005 or the classic era, then you can jump in here and not be confused at all. Although I know that theory that he stated falls apart very quick, but we'll get to it once it does. So I noticed, and this is coming from my knowledge of what's going to happen in the future, the Doctor is already name dropping, like, he name dropped the Rani, and I know that the Rani comes in. So stuff like that always makes me wonder if Russell T Davies kind of made him name drop that, knowing that that's where he was going with all of this. I don't know how I feel about that, because again, this is supposed to be like a hard reboot, but it was just him talking about the different titles that you can have as a Time Lord, so it's not that bad. But it was just one of those things where it was just like, is this him trying to do like a whole wink wink, this is coming kind of thing? Because considering how bad that ends up being, because the fucking shit show with the Rani, and he might have been better as leaving alone. He said it's like a chameleon circuit too, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, because it's literally called the chameleon circuit. He said it's like a chameleon. Why didn't he just say it's called the chameleon circuit? It makes disguise the TARDIS as the surroundings. It seemed a bit confusing to me, but I don't know how I even feel about the new TARDIS interior. It's very sparse. It's very empty looking, in my opinion, and that jukebox sitting there is really out of place. It sticks out like a sore thumb because it's so sparse, and it makes me wonder, is that going to come into use somehow? Because it's sitting there so obviously that it's just kind of like, is that going to be a plot point that they're going to come back to? Because there's nothing else in this room, but there's a jukebox. It seems a bit like overtly obvious to me, and especially since I know the next episode has music in it, it's a bit like, the subtlety is not subtling. We're info dumped in like the first 5 minutes, and I know that this is a hard reboot like we've talked about, but oh my god, they squeezed so much explanation into like just 5 minutes. Like whereas what I remember from my era as a childhood, there was like different bits of information kind of fed in, like, oh, why does it look like a blue box? She asked that when Rose asked that whenever they were outside when they teleported away from the mannequin Mickey, and the head melted. She was like, why does it look like a police box? He explained that there. Then in the next episode, it was like, why are they speaking English? Oh, they're speaking English because da 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 da. Whereas in this episode in Space Babies, it was bang, 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 bang. All the information out in the one conversation, as if they were trying to regurgitate everything that they needed to explain to the audience in one fell swoop without kind of weaving it into the conversation naturally. And they do it a bit later with the language thing. They are able to spread it out a little bit and go like, oh, is there English here? And I was like, oh no, it's a translation circuit. It translates things through its perception filter. But that first 5 minutes of that episode felt like I had to be taking notes on information, like not just notes on like what I think, like notes on, oh, I'm gonna have to remember this later, it's gonna be on the test. So I don't know how that felt for people who haven't watched Doctor Who at all and decided to come in at this point, because that was so much information just crammed into the 5 minutes that like it made the writing a bit nefarious, like dubious. It was like a bit, I'm not using the right words at all. Not very good on Russell T Davies's part as a writer, because like in the past, like they've been able to kind of like spread it out throughout the episodes instead of kind of cramming it all in, so that like you're having to like remember all of this all at once. Also, he said Last of the Time Lords. Pfft, come on. At this point, we know you're fucking not. Like, I've seen posts on Tumblr where people are saying like every time the Doctor brings up that he's the last of the Time Lords, another Time Lord spawns. Because every time he says it, there's a new one. There's always someone else. Isn't the Master in a tooth right now or something like that? Because you're not the last of them. Just stop saying that. Something that bothered me in this episode is Russell T Davies repeating stuff that he's already done. The butterfly thing was a conversation that he had with Martha. The why would you step on a butterfly kind of thing. They actually went a bit further with it and actually had Ruby step on the butterfly, but still in the context of the conversation, it was about stepping on a butterfly and changing the human race. But the one, and that one I could have excused, but the one that really got me was him having Ruby call her mum. Like, he fixed up her phone right there on the spaceship as they're looking out into space, and he zaps her phone and she calls her mum right there, and then she asks, how much does it cost? That is literally the end of the world. It could have been a nudge reference thing, but it was like the whole kind of like way of kind of fixing her phone so that she could call home. That whole scene was just beat for beat what was written for the end of the world in the series 1 in 2005. It just felt a bit lazy. Like, there's surely another way they could have done that would be a bit more creative and a bit different and didn't feel like it was just repeating part of a script that's already been written. Ruby's screams as she was running from the bogeyman were so real. Like, I felt them. Like, I was just like, yeah, that's probably the first time in a long time I've felt a companion just being genuine and fucking roaring as they're running because they're so fucking scared. It's realistic, and I like that. I like that you can feel how genuinely scared she is, because I'd be fucking shitting it too. Even though apparently it smells like shit down there too because of the baby's nappies, which is bizarre, but we won't get into that. I like the reasoning for the baby farm. The reasoning for the baby farm is so I say it's creepy. The execution of it is creepy, like the babies in the tubes. But the reasoning makes sense. You know, like some populations are starting to die out, so they start to farm babies instead of trying to like give birth naturally. It makes sense. It's a good kind of reasoning for there to be a baby farm. And even the word baby farm, there's just something really fucking creepy about that. They didn't really follow through with the creepiness of it all. Like, it gets very comical very fast, especially when the babies in the prams come in. But that first moment where they're seeing all the babies in the tubes, that was all really creepy, and I really liked that. And I really like the design of the bogeyman as well, even if I do find the decision to make him made of actual bogies questionable. It's a bit weird, but I suppose it's like one of those things where it uses the resources that it has kind of thing. But it kind of made it a bit less scary, in my opinion. The joy that the Doctor found in scaring the babies when he found out about the boogeyman felt very out of character for me. I can understand him being fascinated by the concept of a boogeyman, but he doesn't strike me as the kind of character who would laugh whenever babies are crying around him and he's bringing up onto the screen the exact thing that terrifies them and then laughs when they're all even more scared. It didn't feel right. It felt very out of character. It felt very unlike him, and I know every iteration of him is different, and I know every actor has a different like take on these things, but it didn't feel like him to me. It felt very sadistic, for one thing, because he took joy. He was so excited and he was laughing while these babies were crying all around him in terror. It felt weird, but that's a writing thing. That's not Shooty's fault. That was a writing thing, because obviously it probably said in the script the Doctor laughs and shows joy and stuff like that. No suspense for me in the who is Ruby's mum thing, because I already know. In the same way I know what the series 2 ending is, I know what the deal with Ruby's mum is. I don't know the exact details of it, but I know what the crack is. I know where we're going and what the point is. So there's going to be no suspense anytime it kind of brings up the, ooh, mystery. What is Ruby? What is Ruby's mum? I already know all that. So anytime that comes up, I can't really judge how that feels to me in terms of mystery or making me question things. I already know, so I can't really comment on how well done I think that is. So I might have to ask you guys on that, who watched it as it was happening, like what you guys felt of the build up towards who Ruby's mom was. I did like how Ruby wasn't immediately taking everything in her stride, and she was kind of asking questions that a human would ask that didn't necessarily make sense, but they made sense to her, like the, why can't you move the spaceship? Can't you fly it over there? And they're like, oh, it's not a spaceship, it's a space station, it doesn't have any engines. That makes sense, because a human would have no fucking clue about something like that. Maybe if they were super into their sci-fi, they might, but Ruby didn't strike me as that kind of person. She was very much just kind of asking questions that any human would ask, you know, and that she wasn't immediately like all knowing and all knowledgeable and taking everything like immediately as if it's not phasing her at all. Because I think that kind of became a problem in Matt Smith's era. Like, I'll never get over those children in Nightmare in Silver. Like, they were the worst written children I have ever seen. And anyone who says, oh, children would only be concerned about Wi-Fi on the moon is a fucking boomer, alright? You're either a boomer or you're out of touch. In the same vein about Ruby, I really like Ruby. I like how she's immediately like I said before, she's not immediately all-knowing, but she's asking questions, she's trying to get information, she's trying to do what she can to kind of help out. She's brave as hell, but she's also realistic in her fear. Like, I think sometimes the companions can be very, like, immediately, like, acting badass and acting with no fear whatsoever, whereas it's more realistic to be fucking scared, but to also be trying to fight through that and have courage anyway. I really like that about Ruby. I really like how she was first screaming and running away from the boogeyman, but immediately whenever she knew Eric was in danger, she was grabbing a pipe and smacking the corridors to get the boogeyman to come to her instead. I really like that about her. And it also makes some decisions about companions becoming mothers a bit questionable, because it seems like Ruby is much more attached to children than Belinda in series 2, but we'll get to that. I'm jumping too far ahead, but still. It's really hard to buy into the last of my kind stuff, because they really tried to build it up there whenever the Doctor was watching the boogeyman kind of like nearly fly out of the airlock, like they were doing the whole last of my kind thing again. And it's hard to buy into, because you know he's not. Even when they try to make you think he is, he's not. The only time I ever genuinely believed he was the only one left was in series 1, series 2, and series 3, because they did it well. It was the first time another Time Lord was brought into the picture. It was the Master, and even after that serial, you see the ring drop into the ash, so even then you know he's not completely dead, and from that point on, he's not the only one. And I feel like trying to convince us that he is just it doesn't work. It doesn't work for us who know. For people who've come in for it in terms of the hard reboot, it might work for them, but we know better. Us who watch the show, who have been watching it, we know better than that, so it's a bit hard to kind of buy into the, oh, he feels bad for it because it's the last of its kind like him. He's fucking not, you know, he's not. He hasn't been for a very long time. Ruby got the key pretty fast. I liked it better whenever the Doctor kind of like waited a few episodes, got a feel for the companions, saw how they kind of like reacted to like other creatures and other situations before giving them the key. But he kind of gave her that like immediately. Like, they had the adventure in the Church of Ruby Road, and then they had this adventure of the Space Babies, and then it was like, oh, key. It just felt very quick, you know? Like, God love Martha. I always come back to Martha. Martha's my queen. I love Martha Jones. She had to fucking fight for a fucking place on that TARDIS. And when you see him like give it away to like people, like that woman gave her last breath to him on her first episode. In Smith and Jones, she gave the Doctor her last breath, and yet it took until the Lazarus experiment to have her as a proper companion. And then what was it, 42 to get her key? Oh, Martha Jones, he didn't deserve you. You were too good for him. I like that the doctor told her, we cannot see your mum. It's very, I would have liked it if it was kind of like he kind of learned his lesson from taking Rose to see her father on Father's Day, on the Father's Day episode. But it seemed more, it was kind of like, you know, there's something weird going on with that era of time and you can't, I can't take you there kind of thing. But I thought it was nice that Ruby was just like, well, we are going to go see my mom. And they went to see her adopted mom. I thought that was really sweet. And they got to go at Christmas and it was all very nice. I forgot that it was Christmas time. I've only ever seen the church on Ruby Road. I forgot that was Christmas. I didn't forget it was a Christmas episode, but I forgot that she got into TARDIS on Christmas or Christmas Eve. So it's nice that she got to spend Christmas with her mom, and it's also nice that there's no secrecy. Like, I assume the TARDIS landing in the living room is going to be like, oh yeah, I'm off traveling. Kind of like a Rose and Jackie Tyler kind of thing when Jackie understood where Rose was going this whole time, like not disappearing for a fucking year. I really like that. It was really nice, and there is something nice about the doctor being a lot less like, oh, no more domestics, I don't care about the family kind of thing. And it was nice that it was funny when he said, don't let her slap me, because he's fed up with being slapped by mothers. David Tennant's doctor got enough of that. Okay, final thoughts on Ncuti as a doctor. I say final thoughts, it's final thoughts for this episode. I've written down here, I don't think one episode is enough to kind of determine how I feel about Ncuti as the Doctor. I got a glimpse of him, obviously, as the Doctor in The Church on Ruby Road and now in Space Babies. I still don't think I've seen enough to kind of determine how I feel about his iteration of the Doctor. I do feel like his acting was a bit exaggerated at some points. I don't know if that was like an intentional choice, if that's what he has chosen to do with the character, but it felt like sometimes whenever he was asked a question, like by Ruby, he was kind of very like, oh, blah, 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 you know, like very like exaggerated when it should have been a bit more, you know, maybe pulled back a bit. And I think it really stood out whenever, in comparison to Millie Gibson, who I think was a lot more kind of like, not necessarily relaxed, but a lot more kind of like natural feeling and a lot more realistic. I think in comparison, standing beside her being like a bit more like realistic, and then he's being exaggerated, they kind of clash against each other with their acting styles. But like I say, it might just be that I haven't seen enough yet. One episode isn't enough to determine an opinion on anything. It might just be growing pains, because the Doctor is a role that kind of takes some time to get into. And I also think that like an episode like Space Babies, it's a very weird one to try to get people into as a first episode, because it was okay. I wasn't exactly bowled over by it, but it was alright. You know, the babies were creepy as hell. Like, babies in the prams, and you know that thing they do to get the mouth moving, that's creepy as hell. But it's just a weird one to start with. I feel like they should have maybe started with one of their stronger ones, because I have a feeling that viewership probably dropped quite a bit with this being the first episode that they started this new hard reboot with. But I'm going to keep battering on. Jinx Monsoon is in the next episode. I love Jinx Monsoon. I was rooting for her all the way in season 5 of RuPaul's Drag Race. I was considering getting a t-shirt that said water off a duck's back, because that's what she used to say whenever she was about to be judged. So I'm so excited to see her role in the episode, and I can't wait to see her like just cause chaos, because I know she plays a villain, which feels very befitting. So I'm looking forward to that. And, you know, looking forward to Doctor Who is something I never thought I would feel again. So, you know, that in itself is a gift. So, yes, those are my thoughts on Space Babies. Let me know what you thought down below. What are your thoughts? Did you like the episode? Did you hate it? What did you think of Ncuti at this point as the Doctor? What did you think of Millie as the companion? Like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my book if you want. Don't do that if you don't want to. I don't want any of you there if you don't want to be there. And remember, it's important to give these things a try. Because at least if you try it, you can see whether it's your thing or not. Because I think forming an opinion on something without at least giving it a go and listening to the thoughts of other people instead of forming your own opinion. Form your own opinion. Your opinion matters, you know? It's very important to have your own opinion on these things, you know? So, I'll see you next time, guys.